Welcome to your deep dive.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be cracking open The Spiritualism of Nature
Okay.
by W.M. Lockwood,
Right.
published in 1899.
Sounds interesting.
Now, I know the title might sound a bit, well, old school,
Yeah.
but trust me, this book is anything but.
Okay.
Lockwood tackles spiritualism not through religious dogma,
Mm-hmm.
but through a scientific and philosophical lens.
Interesting.
It's a really unique perspective,
I'm excited.
and I can't wait to explore it with you.
Yeah, you're in for a treat.
Okay.
Lockwood was a real trailblazer,
Okay.
challenging conventional wisdom in both science and religion.
Okay.
For example, he goes right for the jugular
Mm,
with the whole idea of a first cause, like a
Wow.
God creating everything.
okay.
He argues that if we accept the self-existence
Yeah.
of things like mathematics and the elements,
Yeah.
the need for a supernatural creator just vanishes.
It's like if math just exists. It
Exactly.
always has, always will. Then who needs a God to invent it?
Right.
That really makes you think about the assumptions we bring to our understanding of the universe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just the beginning.
Okay.
Lockwood then redefines the very meaning
Oh, wow.
of spirit and spiritual.
Okay.
He says traditional religions have got it all wrong.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What does he think spirit means?
For Lockwood, spirit doesn't refer to some ethereal being
Mm-hmm.
or supernatural force.
Right.
It's about the invisible active life principles
Yeah.
inherent in every single element.
Okay.
Think of it as the driving force behind everything we see in the material world.
So, like, how oxygen has that active principle
Perfect example.
that keeps us alive.
Yeah.
We can't see the principle itself, but
Okay.
we experience its effects
Exactly,
every
yeah.
second of every day.
And to understand this further,
Yep.
Lockwood introduces the concept of polarity.
Now, I've heard that term before, but usually in the context of like magnets or electricity.
Yeah.
How does Lockwood apply it to, well, everything?
He describes polarity as the inherent ability of all elements and substances
Okay.
to act and be acted upon,
Yeah.
to attract and repel.
Right.
It's this constant interplay of forces,
Mm-hmm.
a kind of cosmic dance, if you will.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah,
He's saying this polarity isn't just some scientific phenomenon.
right.
It's the foundation of all cosmic processes.
Precisely.
Okay.
He even uses the example of how water is formed to
Right.
illustrate this.
Yeah.
The specific polar tensions within oxygen and hydrogen
Okay.
are what determine the exact ratio
Mm-hmm.
in which they combine to create H2O.
Yeah.
It's not random. It's governed by these underlying principles.
This is making me think about all those times I've heard opposites attract. Lockwood might say there's actually a very real energetic basis
Absolutely.
for that,
Yes.
but it's not just about chemistry,
Right.
right? He takes this idea of polarity way beyond that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He argues that polarity is at play in the growth of plants, the development of human consciousness,
Wow.
even the formation of galaxies.
So he's suggesting that there are these invisible forces, these
Yeah.
polar tensions, shaping everything around us,
Yeah.
even our relationships and personal growth.
It is.
That's a pretty radical concept.
It is.
Wow.
And to explain it further, Lockwood dives into another fascinating idea.
Okay.
Formative energies.
Okay, unpack that one for me.
Okay.
What are these formative energies, and
Right.
how do they fit into all of this?
Lockwood argues that these formative energies are the true building blocks of reality.
Okay.
They're the blueprints,
Mm-hmm.
the invisible forces
Right.
that shape and mold the material world
Yeah.
as we perceive it.
Okay.
He uses the example of lime.
Okay.
The powdered form of lime isn't the true essence.
Mhm.
It's just the outward expression
Yeah.
of the unseen forces that give it its properties.
I'm really trying to wrap my head around this. You're
Yeah.
saying our senses are basically showing us only a fraction?
That's the challenge Lockwood throws down.
Wow.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality.
What we perceive as solid real,
Right.
it's actually just the tip of the iceberg.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
He applies these same principles
Mm-hmm.
to the concept of life after death.
Okay, now we're getting to the really big questions.
Yeah.
So, Lockwood believes in an afterlife.
He does,
Yeah.
but his explanation is far from traditional religious views.
Okay.
He uses the idea of molecular reciprocity to explain how individual consciousness could persist
Okay.
beyond the physical body.
Molecular reciprocity.
Yeah.
That sounds complicated.
Think of two magnets.
Okay.
Even when you separate them,
Mm-hmm.
they're still linked by an invisible force.
Right.
Lockwood suggests something similar might be happening
Oh.
with our consciousness and the physical world.
Mm-hmm. So instead of saying we go to heaven or hell,
Right.
he's saying that the same laws that govern the material world, those same formative energies, also apply to the spiritual realm.
That's the crux of it.
Okay.
He believed there's a continuity,
Yeah.
a connectedness
Right.
between the physical and spiritual realms.
Okay.
Now, Lockwood was writing this in 1899.
Right.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Considering you're already familiar with a lot of different theories, on the afterlife, does any of this resonate with you so far?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm finding his approach really intriguing,
Okay.
especially how he tries to ground these spiritual concepts in scientific principles.
Right.
But I have to wonder
Right.
how much of what he was saying has actually been validated
Uh-huh.
by modern science.
Yeah.
It seems like he was way ahead of his time.
You're absolutely right. Lockwood was incredibly prescient,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we'll explore in part 2. We'll dive into how modern discoveries in fields like cerebral physiology and molecular biology actually support
Right.
many of his seemingly radical ideas.
I can't wait.
It'll be fun.
This is definitely a deep dive. I'm glad I took.
Me too. Welcome back. I'm eager to unpack how modern science has actually validated some of Lockwood's ideas.
Me too. Before we left off, we were discussing Lockwood's concept of molecular reciprocity and how he uses it to explain the possibility of consciousness persisting after death. I have to admit, I'm finding his approach really refreshing.
Okay.
It's not about blind faith or dogma.
Yeah.
It's about applying the same principles that govern the physical world to the realm of the spiritual.
That's exactly what makes Lockwood's work so compelling even today.
Yeah.
He was essentially bridging the gap between science and spirituality.
Right.
Long before it became a popular topic.
So let's talk about that bridge.
Okay.
What are some specific examples of how modern science has caught up to Lockwood's ideas?
Well, one area where we see a lot of overlap is in the study of cerebral physiology, which is basically how the brain works.
Right.
Lockwood argued that consciousness isn't simply a byproduct of the physical brain, but rather an independent force that uses the brain as an instrument.
That's pretty radical.
It is.
It's almost like he's saying our consciousness, our soul, if you will, is separate from the physical matter of our brain.
Exactly.
Wow.
And modern neuroscience is starting to uncover evidence that supports this view.
Okay.
For example, there's growing research into near-death experiences, where people report having vivid conscious experiences, even when their brains show no signs of activity.
I've heard about those studies.
Have you?
It really challenges the traditional materialistic view.
It does.
That consciousness is solely a product of brain function.
It does. And it aligns perfectly with Lockwood's concept of formative energies.
Right.
He argues that these energies, including the energy of our consciousness, can exist independently of the physical forms they inhabit.
Okay, that's cerebral physiology.
Right.
What about other fields?
Another fascinating area is molecular biology.
Okay.
Lockwood talks about how seemingly inanimate matter actually possesses a kind of inherent intelligence or life force.
He uses the example of plants selectively absorbing nutrients.
Precisely.
And even seemingly communicating with each other.
And modern research into plant behavior is revealing incredible complexities that support Lockwood's observations.
Wow.
Scientists are discovering that plants can sense and respond to their environments in sophisticated ways. Even exhibiting behaviors that resemble learning and memory.
It's like they're much more aware and intelligent.
Lockwood would definitely agree.
Than we give them credit for.
And this isn't limited to plants. He also talks about the intelligence inherent in the formation of crystals. How those intricate structures arise, not through random chance, but through the guiding force of these formative energies.
Now that you mention crystals, I remember reading about how some researchers are exploring the potential to store and transmit information.
Wow.
Almost like organic hard drives.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
And it directly echoes Lockwood's assertion that there's more to matter than meets the eye.
Right.
These seemingly inert substances possess properties and potentials that we're only beginning to understand.
This is all so mind-blowing.
I know, it's pretty amazing.
It's like Lockwood was peering into the future of scientific discovery.
He really was a visionary.
Yeah.
And one more area I want to touch on
Okay.
is electromagnetism.
Okay.
Remember how Lockwood talks about the interconnectedness of everything? How there are these invisible forces linking the physical and spiritual realms.
Yeah, he even suggests that communication
Right.
between those realms might be possible
Through
through these unseen forces. It made me think about all those attempts to scientifically study paranormal phenomena like EVP recordings and things like that.
And modern physics is increasingly acknowledging the role of electromagnetism in everything.
Yeah.
From the behavior of subatomic particles to the large-scale structure of the universe.
Wow.
Some physicists are even proposing theories that suggest consciousness itself might be a form of electromagnetic energy.
So if consciousness is energy, and energy can't be destroyed, only transformed.
Well, then that opens up some very interesting possibilities.
I know, right?
About what might happen to our consciousness after we die, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It's like all these different pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together. But Lockwood doesn't just focus on the science, does he?
Right.
He also delves into the philosophical implications of these ideas.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's where things get really fascinating.
Right.
In the next part, we'll explore Lockwood's unique perspective on spiritualism and what it means for our understanding of life, death, and the nature of reality itself.
Right.
We'll also dive into some specific examples from the natural world that illustrate these principles in action.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm ready to dive into those real-world examples that Lockwood uses to illustrate his ideas.
Right.
I'm especially curious about his take on nature.
Yeah.
He seemed to believe there was something more to it than just the material aspects.
You're picking up on one of Lockwood's core themes.
Okay.
He saw nature as inherently infused with spiritualism.
Okay.
Not in like a supernatural way.
Right.
But in the sense that those unseen formative energies are constantly shaping and guiding the natural world.
So it's like those energies are the artists and nature is the canvas.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of his favorite masterpieces to point to is the plant kingdom.
Okay.
He argues that plants demonstrate an intelligence that goes beyond simple chemical reactions.
Now, I know some people might roll their eyes at the idea of plant intelligence, but Lockwood was writing this long before all this fascinating studies on plant behavior came out, right?
He observed how plants can be exposed to all sorts of elements and compounds.
Yeah.
Yet they still manage to grow and thrive according to their own internal blueprint.
So it's not just about the water and nutrients in the soil.
Right.
There's something more directing the process.
Lockwood would say it's the plant's unique formative energy, guiding its growth, even allowing it to selectively attract beneficial elements and repel harmful ones.
It's like they have kind of innate wisdom about what they need to flourish. It makes you wonder if we've underestimated the intelligence.
That's a question Lockwood definitely encourages us to ponder.
Of the natural world all along.
And this concept of inherent intelligence isn't limited to the plant world.
Right.
He sees it even in the seemingly inanimate realm of minerals.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Right.
I've always been fascinated by crystals.
Yeah.
Those intricate geometric structures that seem almost too perfect to be random formations.
Lockwood shared your fascination.
Okay.
He saw crystallization as another clear example of unseen forces shaping matter, according to precise laws and principles. Remember his concept of polarity.
Yeah.
He argued that those same polar tensions that govern the formation of a simple water molecule are also at play in the creation of those incredibly complex and beautiful crystal structures.
It's like nature is expressing itself through geometry.
It is.
And it makes you wonder if there's a deeper meaning or purpose.
That's the beauty of Lockwood's work.
Yeah.
It encourages us to look beyond the surface, to seek out the underlying principles and connections that unify everything.
Okay.
And for him, this all culminates in the human being.
So how does all of this apply to us?
Okay.
What's the connection between these natural phenomena and human consciousness?
Lockwood argues that human consciousness is itself an expression of these spiritual principles.
Okay.
Remember those formative energies we discussed?
Yeah.
Those blueprints for creation.
Right.
He believed that our individual consciousness, our soul, is essentially a formative energy that shapes and guides our physical body.
So it's not just our genes that determine who we are.
Right.
There's this other layer, this soul blueprint.
That's Lockwood's perspective.
Wow.
And he emphasizes that this soul blueprint isn't static.
Okay.
It's constantly evolving, growing, and learning through our experiences in the material world.
It makes you wonder if those formative energies...
Right. Those unseen forces we've been talking about are actually what drive our desire to learn, to grow, to connect with something larger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful insight.
Wow.
Lockwood would likely say that your very drive to explore these ideas, to engage in this deep dive, is a manifestation of those formative energies at work.
Wow. I'm getting chills.
I know, right?
It really puts things into perspective.
It does.
So if our soul is a form of energy, and energy can't be destroyed, only transformed, what does Lockwood say happens to that soul energy after we die?
He believed that because it's a form of energy, it can't be destroyed. It simply transitions to a different state of being, one that's no longer bound by the limitations of the physical body. And because everything is interconnected, those same universal laws of polarity and reciprocity continue to apply, even in the realm of the spiritual. So it's not about going to a specific place like heaven or hell. It's about a transformation, a continuation of that soul journey, guided by those same fundamental principles we see at play in nature.
That's a beautiful summation of Lockwood's perspective.
Wow.
He invites us to see life and death not as separate events, but as part of a continuous, interconnected process.
I have to say, I started this deep dive with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
But you've really opened my eyes to a whole new way
Oh, good. I'm glad.
of looking at the universe and our place within it.
Yeah.
Lockwood's ideas are challenging, thought-provoking, and surprisingly relevant even today.
I agree. He was a true pioneer, bridging the gap between science and spirituality. In a way that feels incredibly insightful. Even more than a century later.
Well, thank you for guiding us through this fascinating exploration.
Of course, it's been a pleasure.
It's given me a lot to ponder, and I'm sure our listener feels the same.
I always find Lockwood's work to be incredibly inspiring.
And to you, dear listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
If the principles of polarity and reciprocity extend beyond the physical world, as Lockwood suggests, what might that mean for your understanding of consciousness communication and your connection to the universe and those who have passed on?
It's a big question.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.